to the breakthrough. We apologize for the delays. Apparently, the president did not realize who needed to get down here tonight. We hope everyone is well. When first we came up with this concept and we titled it, The Breakthrough merely referred to the aforementioned first performance by an African-American woman on the Metropolitan Opera stage of the quintessential ballet role of Odette Odile, a role so canonical that one of Raven Wilkinson's colleagues at the Ballet Russe once said to her, "Don't even try for it, darling, because a black woman will never perform it." Well, we proved her wrong, didn't we? Now we find ourselves with a breakthrough, a boundary-breaking breakthrough, which will take its place in the history books, along with Jesse Owens' 4 gold medal sweep of the Berlin 1936 Olympics, which gave the lie to the theories of Aryan superiority. A breakthrough that is on a level with Jackie Robinson joining the major leagues and changing baseball forever. And I'm going to say it, a breakthrough on a par with Barack Obama winning the presidency of the United States. I dare say, statistically speaking, a politician has a better chance of being elected to the presidency than most dancers have of making it to the exalted ranks of principal in American Ballet Theatre, our nation's national ballet company. And Misty has done this. With her usual humility, she has always acknowledged that she didn't get here on her own and that she stands on the shoulders of the numberless brilliant dancers of color who came and forged a way out of no way. And now it's my pleasure to introduce at least 2 of those women to you tonight. In a career that has spanned nearly 70 years, and wait till you see what she looks like, Carmen De Lavallade has gone from her native Los Angeles, and as Laura mentioned, the Lester Horton Company, to the sound stages of the Fox Studios, where she appeared in films like Carmen Jones and Odds Against Tomorrow, to the stage of Broadway in House of Flowers, where she met her husband, the late, great Jeffrey Holder, to being a prima ballerina at the Metropolitan Opera, to joining her childhood friend, Alvin Ailey, in touring East Asia, to appearing in concert stages from Tel Aviv to Jacob's Pillow, to appearing as a guest with American Ballet Theatre, to joining the faculty of the Yale School of Drama and training the likes of Sigourney Weaver and Meryl Streep, to appearing in countless plays with American Repertory, to choreographing dances for everyone from Dance Theatre of Harlem to Alvin Ailey to the Metropolitan Opera, and television appearances, film appearances, and most recently she has been touring in a one-woman show called As I Remember It. Please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, the woman whose dancing was once described as dancing the way birds sing, Miss Carmen De Lavallade. At a time when our country still lived under segregation, de jure in the South and de facto in the North, Raven Wilkinson became the first Black woman in the legendary Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo in 1954. There, she danced alongside ballet greats like Freddie Franklin and Lupe Serrano. Within a year, she was a soloist, distinguishing herself in roles in Les Sylphides and the Swan Lake Pas de Quatre. You know it. Da, 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 da. If you know no other Tchaikovsky, we all know that from dishwashing commercials. From there, she went on to the Dutch National Ballet, where she also danced to great acclaim. She returned to the United States in 1973, where she joined the New York City Opera ballet company, dancing till the age of 50. So not only does black not crack, apparently doesn't get arthritis either. And she stayed with the New York City Opera Ballet until the company folded about 3 years ago. Please welcome the legendary You can also see her in the documentary on Misty's life, reprising her Swan like pas de quatre with a verve a 20-year-old would envy. Welcome the legendary Raven Wilkinson. Now, one would have to have been living not only a rock, but under a quarry, not to know Misty Copeland at this point. She was named to the Time 100. She has been on 60 Minutes. Her Under Armour commercial has had 8 million views. She is absolutely remarkable. This is a woman who willed what she wanted, starting at the age of 13 in a ballet class at the Boys and Girls Club of San Pedro, wearing a pair of sneakers and cutoffs. She propelled herself to the studio company of American Ballet Theatre. 2 years later, at 19, she was in the Corps de Ballet. At 24, she was a soloist. As a soloist, she danced the principal roles of the Firebird in the Firebird, Coppelia in Coppelia, Gamzati in La Bayadère, Lescaut's mistress in Manon, Emilia in Othello, Juliet in Romeo and Juliet, and Odette Odile in Swan Lake. This is earning your place, ladies and gentlemen. That's what it's called. And she's also a best-selling author of a children's book and a magnificent memoir. She is also bringing a mass appeal to ballet that we haven't seen since the days of the Russian defectors at the height of the Cold War, when we were all excited about Nureyev and Baryshnikov and Makarova. So please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, American Ballet Theatre principal dancer, Miss Misty Copeland. Now, ladies, before we begin our journey in earnest, I wanted us to just take a moment to reflect upon this extraordinary historical event. Misty, you've now had a chance to absorb what has happened. And can you please tell us what it felt like to be in that room and to hear that finally the dream that you had nurtured since you were 13 years old, lying on the floor of your living room in your Hello Kitty slippers, watching DVDs of ABT dancing Don Quixote, and to know that now you are a full star in the company. It's okay to cry.
It's not even those words that you're saying that are making me emotional. It's being here with these two, that I still just don't feel worthy enough just to be up here with these incredible women, but so many that have done so much and fought even harder than I did to get to this point. So, it still hasn't really hit me, but this is such an incredible moment that I never imagined happening. I don't know, it doesn't feel real yet, so I don't know what to say.
For Carmen and for Raven, where were you when you learned, and what does this mean to you?
Let's see, where was I? I got a call from Gilda, and she said, "Do you know that Misty has been made principal?" And of course, I knew it was going to happen, so I said, I didn't know it, but I knew it. So then I got by the television and watched all the new shows, clicked back and forth so I could get on every show, and I was ecstatic. And I had friends calling me from Europe saying, "Oh, I saw you on stage giving her flowers in Swan Lake," all the way to Holland. So I thought, this is miraculous. Ballet has really hit the jackpot.
Oh, and I I was in New Haven, day before I opened my piece at the Yale Repertory Theatre. And I wanted to come and give you flowers on that day, but I was in the middle of a technical guffaw. I mean, I was in a space that I hadn't been in many, many years, and it was smaller than I thought, and we had a new director, stage manager, so I had to stay and try to get myself together. But it was, I said, it's about time. It was really, well, I don't know, it's so lovely and such an exciting time, not since Janet, and it.
And we're going to talk about.
Yeah,
so.
we'll get there. But it's one of those things I think all young girls dream of. I did, really. Yes, I was in the period of Danilova and Mr. Franklin, and I used to stand outside the Philharmonic Auditorium waiting for them to come out. I still have some books, their pictures, you see, and that was one of those things you dreamed of. But at that time, you really, it was kind of off limits because you sort of were not felt welcome. You may be able to study, and I'll tell you about that later.
So we're absolutely going to get into that because we're going to have a
later.
Discussion in two parts. The first part is really looking back at what it took to get here historically over the last 80 years and for you personally, and then we're going to look to the future. So looking back, African Americans have been trying to be part of ballet since ballet's inception in this country, because it began in earnest here in the 30s when ballet companies began to be formed, and immediately African Americans wanted to be part of it and were told no, and so there was sort of a Negro leagues of ballet. There was the Ballet Nègre of Katherine Dunham. Then there was the American Negro Ballet, the first classic Negro Ballet, and the New York Negro Ballet. Have we said Negro often enough? Thank God the name has changed. And American Ballet Theatre even had its own Negro section and a Spanish section and a white section. The white people got $40 a week, the Spanish people got 20, and we got 10. So into this world, you were born in California, and you had a love of dance, and you came to classes late, but you had a difference, which is you had a cousin who was a role model, Janet Collins, the first African-American prima ballerina with the Metropolitan Opera. Can we please cue the photograph? There she is, dancing the Dance of the Hours in La Gioconda in 1953. And this is also significant. She'd been with them for 2 years at that point, right? And but she's on point. So tell us about Janet and your relationship to her and how she inspired you.
Janet was 10 years older than I, so I was very young. And she was never home. She was always, she danced with Tally Beatty, by the way.
Yes.
And Janet was not allowed to take any classes. I remember her renting a studio in Hollywood, and someone would come and teach her, but you were not allowed in the classes. Otherwise, the white students would walk out. You see, and she tried very hard. She did audition for Ballets Russes. Well, it was a different world at that time. And Mr. Massine, she did wonderful. Anitra's Dance, by the way, and she was wonderful. Everybody loved her, but at that time, he said, well, you would have to lighten your skin.
Didn't he just plain say to her, you'd have to paint yourself white? And I
well,
don't think
not
you'd
exactly
like
that, but it was like, and you wouldn't want to do that, would you?
Yes, it was 1933.
And I don't think he said it in a mean way. He really would like, but those were the times, you see. And she said no, and it really broke her heart, And but she was a fighter. And she and Tally worked together. They did nightclub acts, and she did a adagio with two guys that threw her all over the place. Adagio dancing was very popular at that time. And she did whatever she had to do. And when she finally got to New York, and she was in the Broadway show Out of This World, which just knocked everybody out, and then she ended at the Met, and that was because of Zachary Solov.
Who was the choreographer for the Met Opera Ballet.
But it was Rudolph Bing, the director of the opera, that said, he said, Mr. Bing, I have this lovely dancer, in those days, Negro. And he said, yes, can she dance? He said, yes, well, sign her up. That was it. But he was from Europe.
Yeah.
He was not American, you see.
No.
And I think that
Well,
was
and he said it was one of his dreams to integrate the Met.
yes, that
He
was
got a lot of pushback from board members,
Absolutely.
but he said, no one told me I couldn't, so here we are.
There
And
she
she was a
is.
huge hit.
absolutely.
And then you followed her.
Yes,
as
I
the
did,
prima.
thanks to Janet. It's terrible. She was my hero. I must say that I am embarrassed with my blessings, because when I was coming up in Los Angeles, she sent me to Carmelita Marachi, my ballet teacher, and Lester also sent me to Carmelita. And then she sent me to Lester. And then at the Met, and I was introduced to people who didn't care who you were by that time, you see. So I kind of missed some of the abuse that some people,
So was it an open atmosphere within the confines of the Met Opera Ballet?
I had no problems at all that I knew of. But you see, I focus on the work, so sometimes I'm rather oblivious to what's around me. That's true. I'm sorry, but that I get concentrated, and I don't care. I've got to get the work done. You see, but it was always welcome. There were moments in places where I got the feeling that something, but like I said, the work. Otherwise, your mind gets scattered.
Yeah.
You see.
So Raven, for you, you grew up in New York, and you
Yes.
fell in love with,
Ballet.
and it was ballet or bust for you.
Yeah, it was ballet or bust.
And you
I almost
studied-
busted.
You, you studied with Swoboda, and you
Yeah.
studied also at the School of American
I
Ballet.
didn't actually, not till after Ballet Russe. I went there for some courses for about 2 years.
But in your classes, which were integrated, or maybe you were the only, what was the atmosphere like for you?
Well, I think I didn't notice anybody but looking like me but me, and I had no trouble. Madame Swoboda's receptionist told me later when we had reunions and she was in her 90s, she said, well, I always asked your mother what she was, and she always said, we are American. So, and by then, and here's this lady in her very latter part of her 90s, and she said, when we were talking about race and dance and everything, she said, are you sure your mother would like you doing this now? And I thought it's a little late to talk about it now, talking about race and dancing, but because a lot of it was just swept under the carpet, unfortunately, in those days.
So Misty, for you, you discovered Raven's existence watching a tape of the Ballet Russe. What was it for you to discover Raven, and then to?
When I entered the classical ballet world, being African American was not something that ever crossed my mind. Just from the environment I grew up in Southern California, which is very diverse, and I was very aware. My mother raised me that you are mixed, you're German, Italian, and African American, but the world is going to view you as a black woman, and that was something that was always in the back of my mind. But when I went into the ballet studio, I was just another dancer, at least in California. When I got to New York and I joined American Ballet Theatre, I became much more aware of the fact that I was the only black woman in a company of 80 dancers for a decade. And it was something that came up a lot in conversation, and it was never something that came up when I was younger, at least to my knowledge. Maybe I was too focused on the work and oblivious to what was happening or being said. When I saw the documentary on Ballet Russe and I saw Raven, I feel like in order to know about the history of African American ballerinas, you really have to dig in there and do the research. It's not something that's just going to be lent information to us. So it was kind of this shocking recognition that I saw in Raven that just kind of woke up this thing inside of me that was just like, you are a part of something. You are a part of this rich history that you don't know about. And it made me upset, and it also made me feel really powerful. And that was kind of the start of like, I want to share this with the world. I want to learn more about my history of African American ballerinas and bring it to the ballet world and the broader world. And Raven sparked that in me, and then I learned about Janet, and it's just kind of kept going. But I feel like it gave me a purpose in a way that I didn't know I had before.
Raven, you were saying that there's going to be a children's book about you, which I think we need because we're a little tired of the Black Holy Trinity of publishing on the Black History Month table of Harriet Tubman, Martin Luther King, and Rosa Parks. So when are you working on this book?
Those are also very nice
They're very
people.
lovely people, but we need...
I like them.
We like them too, but we could use some new ones.
It's time for a new deal. Well, yes, there's something being worked on. So,
Okay. Well, speaking of that history, in 1954, Brown versus the Board of Education had just been passed, and you became a member of the Ballet Russe.
1955.
1955.
Yeah.
And so the first year, apparently, you didn't have too many problems in terms of touring, even in the South.
No,
But
when I
then-
was taking the company, I did tell Mr. Denham, Sergei Denham was the director of the Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo, and I told him I don't want to cause the company any problems or myself problems or danger, but if I'm asked, and you have to realize this was a company full of foreign people. Russian was going this way, Spanish this way, French this way, and when we disgorged from the bus in, little town America, everyone ran. No, they just never had seen something like this. So I don't think they were too anxious to pry or try to figure out who was what. But about my second year, I think someone who was a sub-booker for the Ballet Russe, we were Columbia Touring Management, but they had sub-bookers in every area of the United States, that he realized, and he spoke about it to various theaters and hotels. And for a while, I thought, what a shame this man had to do that. I'm assuming it's a man for some reason. I don't know why, but then I thought about it later, and I thought, well, maybe he felt that I might be in danger, the Ballet Russe might be in danger. He, if he had known and hadn't spoken of it, would have been in trouble, maybe lost his job. There are all kinds of reasons. But from then on, I had problems in the South. And even in the North, apparently in the Midwest, people asked questions because I think they'd heard. So,
Wasn't there an occasion where you went back to a
Yeah.
hotel in Atlanta? Can you tell them
oh,
about
the
that?
hotel. Well, that was the first time that I had a problem. And I stayed at this hotel for 2 years. I mean, my first 2 years. And when we all got off of the bus and were lining up to get our rooms, I noticed that a man in a business suit was talking to Mr. Denham's stand-in on tour, and talking to an African-American woman who drove the elevator, and I knew instantly what was going to happen. And he came over and he asked me, he said, your director said, I asked if they were, in those days, of course, they said Negro or colored. They didn't say black, but Negro or colored, and they said, I asked if there were a Negro in the company, and he said no. He said, but our elevator operators pointed you out. So I said, well, I am. And he said, well, you can't stay here. And I said, I realize that, but what would you say if I told you I've stayed here for 2 years before this and nothing happened? And he said, it's very dangerous now. Things are getting very bad, and they could bomb my hotel. And he actually said, I'm from New Jersey, and some of my best friends. But they didn't stay, those best friends stayed clear of his hotel. And he called me a colored taxi, and I went to the colored motel, and it was a beautiful motel. And the next morning, Mr. Denham got me on a plane back to New York. And so many times I went back to New York during the tours in the South. Other times I didn't, just pieced through. Sometimes I danced in solo roles in certain areas in towns you would have thought. Hattiesburg, Mississippi, everyone talked about it and being so frightened of it. And I think we did Coppelia there or something and just went ahead and did it. And well, I don't want to
What
take up all
drove
the.
you? What finally drove you out of the company?
Well,
because
I'd
they
been
wanted
there
you to
about
stay.
almost. I'd been there a little over 6 years, and I felt someone had said to me, you know, maybe it's a good time for you to leave because you've gone as far as you can go. She was someone very close to the direction and sort of worked as ballet mistress, and I felt that she would know what she was talking about. And it discouraged me. She said, why don't you go out and form a little company of your own and do African dance? So I said, well, you know,
Which comes naturally to all of us.
Spent 5 years on point, and someone now tells me I should do African dance and bare feet. But I let her know. She did not understand. She didn't. She was a European woman. And I think also when I look back on it, in the European countries, many times their national dances were performed as theater pieces. And maybe this was her interpretation. This would have been my national dance. So, I mean, despite the fact that I rather had done the jitterbug or something, but.
So, Misty, this though has always been a pull for African Americans trying to do the classical pieces is, well, where's your modern, where's your modern? And you went through this, Misty, where at a certain point there was that moment where they were saying your line isn't as classical and you excel in the modern pieces. How did you manage to convince the artistic directors of your classic abilities? Because that was a struggle at one point.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing because I feel that Kevin McKenzie and most of the artistic staff has always been 100% behind me and my talent for my talent. But I think there's just something that's ingrained in us in the ballet culture that you see this skin color and you automatically see a contemporary or modern dancer. And it's just hard to envision that person in a classical role. So I don't think that a lot of the decisions were being made because they truly felt I shouldn't be in the company.
No.
But yes, the first maybe 4 or 5 years of my career was spent, I was doing leading roles, but they were either in flat shoes or bare feet, or I was on point but doing contemporary movement. And, I had meetings where I would say, I wasn't trained as an African dancer, a modern dancer, and a hip hop dancer. All I know is classical ballet. And I would like to be pushed in those roles. And I was told, you just aren't as good as the other girls in ballet. But you are, the best in the contemporary work. So that was really, really difficult for me. And I just had to learn to stand my ground and but also how to talk to them and not come in a forceful way or necessarily ask for certain roles, but just continue to say, I'm hungry, I'm eager, I want to be a ballerina, I want to do these roles, what do I need to do? And that was kind of the start of my approach.
And
they started coming.
With Olu, did you not? With your, you wrote about it in your book.
Yes, I did. Yes, my boyfriend, Olu, is definitely someone that I think, and again, it's interesting coming from the corporate world. He's an attorney, and dancers, I don't think we ever really learn how to verbally communicate with people, and we're always looked at as students. And it's really hard for us, I think, to put ourselves out there and how to ask for things. We just don't ever really learn those skills, and that was definitely something I learned from him that has helped me in every aspect of my life, and to be able to do all of these things outside of dancing for American Ballet Theatre. But that was kind of my approach in getting those roles.
Yep. Now, you didn't have to stare down the Ku Klux Klan as as Raven did. However, the pressure of taking the stage as Odette Odile, when you knew the eyes of the ballet world and all those critics were upon you, and there are naysayers, when and where you enter, the whole race enters with you, and you were on point. How did you prepare yourself emotionally and mentally with the weight, 500 years of history, and knowing what this performance meant. It's a lot.
Well, I'm glad you didn't say that to me before. I've never, throughout my career, I've never really felt that pressure. It felt like a privilege, and that I was proud to be representing so many people. It was probably this past season that I, especially in the beginning of the season, just really started to feel the pressure. And I think it's just because so many people were talking, what's going to happen? Is she going to be promoted? And sorry, I can't answer any questions without crying tonight. I just felt like, as much as I've been so open and vocal about what it means to have an African American woman become a principal dancer, not me, not saying I need to be a principal dancer. Like, I know what it takes. I know the path, especially at ABT, to get to that place. And I wasn't there for so long, but my voice, what I was saying was that needed to be broken. That barrier needed to be broken. So at the start of the season, or even the start of this year, just being able to perform these principal roles, like, the title kind of disappeared for me. And it was like, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm doing these things that I've dreamed of doing and worked so hard to do.
So there was a joy in it.
Right. But then with all the media and everyone talking about it, that's when I really started to feel the pressure. Good thing Swan Lake was towards the end of the season, because I had some time to speak to my mentors and people that care about me, that kind of got me mentally back on track and focused just on the work. And by the time that show, my Swan Lake show came, I felt completely comfortable and just ready to do it.
Excellent.
It's always that first time when you're on a stage. I mean, I like I said, I wanted to be a ballet dancer, but my body didn't like it. My feet didn't like it, but my soul liked it, you see. I could understand it. I could do very well if I had the body for it. But when I walked into a role with Lester Horton as Salome, and I started 14. And I got to the Lester Horton Company, and for some reason I was there 2 years studying his technique, which I hadn't had before. I had Melissa Blake, who was modern in ballet, but I was in the role of Salome, following Bella Lewitsky, who was very, very famous at that time. And I remember, and you had that. I didn't think of that I was black or anything, but to be in a role that somebody had made famous and that thing of walking on that stage and having to recreate your own. But you know what I had that was like is Lester Horton. He said, "You're not Bella, and she's not you." So there was no competition. You were free to be who you are, and that's the mentor he was, and gave you the freedom to be who you were, to take that onus off. You're getting into this big role. But it is, yeah. And I think when the press, I must say, when people start, the press comes in and asking you these questions, and it takes a lot to get your mind back on you, because it's like this outside, like a little gnat, mosquitoes out here, and out here, and you're trying to concentrate, and it's you have this to do, but you've done it brilliantly, but I don't know if I made any sense there.
You're making plenty of sense. Yes. For Raven and Misty, both of you had that moment where you almost walked away from ballet entirely. You entered a convent, Raven, for 8 months.
And yet not. I mean, it's like one, as my mother said, from one total devotion to another. Get it straight. And it's nothing like going in a convent to teach you, gee, I had it so good in a And it's nothing like it to train you and teach you so many things that you think you know and don't about life, and about how you have to take hold of yourself, and just, if you want and love something, you have to see it through. Anything, all of us, whatever we are doing, we have to have the courage and the strength to see it through, no matter what the pitfalls and the hurts and the disappointment. So I said to God, if I can ever get in a ballet company again, I'll be in the last row. Of course, I can't be in the last row because I'm too short, but I did get in a ballet company, and it's strange. I had done little things like lecture demos. I had joined Bryansky's little Title III group, and things that were so creative, artistically. It was an experience to create for myself something. And then when I thought of going back in a company, I realized I'm going to have to do without that. Because in a ballet company, you are part of a group, and you have to assume your responsibility as part of a group. So everything is wonderful because you learn from everything. Artistically, you're developed. But it was a wonderful time. I look back on it and I realized that however disappointed I was that I wasn't getting into a company then, I was learning a lot, which I'm so thankful that I had the chance to learn. And also to get back in, when I went back into a company, was in Holland.
Europe was more receptive, wasn't it? Europe was more receptive.
Oh, well, in Europe, you just are who you are. You don't have to be African American. Many of my friends said, why do they call you African? You're not from Africa. And I said, that's a good question. I hadn't quite figured it out yet. But at any rate,
you could have remained in Holland, and yet you chose to come back here with all the challenges, with all the difficulties.
Yes, I just love punishment. I mean, you can go to the doctor and go to the drugstore, apotheke, and get all the pills and everything else, and never pay a cent. When you retire from the ballet, they have a retirement age because the government runs the companies in Europe. And if I had chosen to go into another profession, they pay for your tutelage, your training, they pay for your salary. You get what you made in the ballet the first year. The second year, you got half of that. That's how it was back then, but that was almost 40 years ago. So I think some things, and it wasn't European euros then, so each individual country had their own mores as far as the financials. But I just felt like I'm an American. It's my country. I love my country, and I wanted to come back, and I missed some of the things you'd be surprised that you miss, and that is the incredible like tectonic plates rubbing up against each other, all of our diversities and our different groups and the arguments. I remember Han Ebelar, who with his wife Alexandra Radius were guests in ballet theater for some years. That's long before your time, but at any rate, people would say in a nice way, the Dutch would say, with Watergate, was it Watergate? Yeah. And they said, I get mixed up, there's so many gates now. But and some people would say, well, Americans are so naive. They're so, well, yes, we are naive. We have all these ideals. But the thing that Hans said, he said, yeah, but they're the only country that washes their dirty linen out in public and hangs it up. And I thought, that's what we do. I got to go home and wash my dirty linen.
Oh, well, you did it.
Still washing it, too.
Still washing it.
Well, Misty, you never left the United States, but you were tempted to leave, maybe even ABT.
Yes.
There was a moment where you said to yourself, I'm not going anywhere. I've hit the glass ceiling. What kept you going?
I just, as a young adult, I think most everyone experiences just searching for themselves. And I think a lot of people look for what's familiar, who's like me. And I couldn't find that at ABT. And I had a really, really difficult time. I mean, I moved to New York when I was 17, entered into the main company at 19. And, those are very critical times in a young adult's life, and I really wanted to be around people that I felt I connected with. And I think then I didn't realize, well, yeah, you can connect with anyone in a different way, but I didn't know that at the time. And I just felt like I wasn't going to get anywhere in the company. There had been two African-American females that had reached the rank of soloist before me, and never the rank of principal. So I just thought, the chances of this happening are really slim. So I don't know what I'm doing here. I went over to Dance Theater of Harlem and took class with the company, and Arthur offered me a soloist contract, and I was very tempted. And I had to ask myself, would you be satisfied there? Because ABT was always my dream. And I thought, why let, the closed-minded people that don't think I belong at ABT, or that think I won't succeed there, why let them deter my path? And so I said no, and I went back to ABT, and then DTH folded a couple of months later, I think. So it's meant to be.
It was meant to be. And thank God you stayed. And so now we're in this moment. So now looking to the future, which this is a huge breakthrough, but it's not as though ballet is a hotbed of diversity at this point. However, you have caused a huge change in the audience. You created the Browning of the Met. You sold it out twice, and the audience looked completely different from what it usually looks like. What more do you plan to do in terms of keeping this momentum going and keeping the audience?
I think just continuing to let my voice be heard, and other dancers that look like me, or minority dancers in general. Tomorrow I'm going to be on Melissa Harris Perry with Stella Abrera, who is a Filipino dancer who is the first to be promoted to the rank of principal, and that's a huge deal. So I think just hopefully opening up that door so that I'm not the only one who's speaking about these things. I think that's what's going to keep the audiences growing and changing and more diverse, and hopefully the board of directors and the artistic staff in these classical companies. But especially in America, I think that we have to have a voice outside of the ballet world, I think, in order for it to change. That's been my experience.
And ladies, aren't you feeling a renaissance in ballet? And ballet's back on Broadway with American in Paris. Are you not feeling?
Dance is booming. It's wonderful. And I have to admit that even some of those television programs, and so you can think you can dance and all the Hollywood thing, does help a bit. It really does. I don't know if it helps the concert people very much, I'm afraid. But I must say, when I listening to you about ABT and getting in the company, Agnes DeMille asked me to do ballet. I was guest artist at ABT, and it was called The Four Marys, and it was an English folk song, yes, but she said it in the South with the white planter and the girl, the slave girl, and it was Judith Jamison and Gloria Van Scott and
Cleo Quitman.
Cleo Quitman, yes. Right. And I was the lady, okay. And, I thought, well, my goodness, we're all guests, And what I was shocked is she asked me to do another piece. I brought back the second time to guest in a piece that she used to do. It was called Frail Quarry. The original was Tally Ho. And I danced with Royce Fernandez and Johnny Creetza. I thought, isn't this wonderful? I'm a guest artist and whatnot. Well, that didn't last very long. I didn't know how long that would take, but it was very interesting. Glenn Tetley was choreographing something, and one of the ballerinas was not behaving very well, which would be nameless. And
after a little wine, yes, maybe you'll tell us.
And Glenn said, "Carmen, I want you to do this." Because it was more of a modern kind of piece. And I walked in the room and I sat next to Glenn, and boy, did she pop up! Really, I mean, she was very good after that. I didn't have any problem at all, and that was the end of that. And so, but that was kind of interesting. But then. Nothing after that. Nothing from anybody as a guest. They used to have guest artists, but they wouldn't have that anymore.
Someone said it was like a candle.
No, that was Mary Hinkson. Mary Hinkson.
Mary was one of the four Marys as well, wasn't she?
No.
Okay.
No. But Mary was balancing, Figure in the Carpet. That was when Martha Graham and what was the figure in the car? No, yes.
So
Well, that's-
basically,
No, that was
City
different.
Ballet.
City
yeah,
Ballet.
yeah.
but black
City
women
Ballet.
were invited in as guests
As
and then
guests.
told not to stay, essentially.
Well,
So,
they wouldn't
yeah.
hire you for regular,
But that is now changing, and now
That-
there's an actual
that's what's
effort,
wonderful
which is
about it.
incredible. You have all
Absolutely.
been involved in teaching and mentoring. Can you talk about some of those
You know, there's
activities?
something though, ballet theater used to say that they had black dancers. You know, even though they were
They
sort
weren't
of,
permanent.
yeah, they're sort of apostatized on the main company. I always thought that's really not fair. You know, if you have black dancers, you have them in your repertoire, in
Yep.
your company.
Yep. Well, now,
Not
now we
that I
actually
wasn't
do.
glad to see those dancers dancing, but
Yes.
you know, the little twist of the phrase, and
Yes.
yeah.
So, are you teaching, mentoring young
I'm mainly
people?
mentoring, if anything. I just find that when I was at Delphi for a while, but I thought when you're teaching, around the clock, you have to really be there all the time.
Right.
And then there's that danger of sometimes the students, you become like a wall sconce.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't listen to you anymore. Really, I
You
found
really
that
don't look much
it
like
just
a
goes
sconce.
like this. No, and because I remember having a friend of mine come and just speak
Mm-hmm.
and whatnot, and he was saying everything I had been saying for the last 4 years, and I said bye. That's when I left. Because but I find that if I come in and I speak to them, then they remember for some time because you go away and somehow it helps better that way instead of staying, because that's a full-time job.
So,
It
Misty,
really
you're
is.
mentoring people at Joffrey and elsewhere. So.
I teach a little bit. I've master classes here and there, but that's definitely my experience and what the staff is always telling me. Like, you come in here and you say these things that we've been telling them for years, and they listen. They like something new, I guess. I started mentoring, I think I must have been about 26 or 27 when I started mentoring the first dancer that I just felt a connection to. But I just feel that it's also kind of a part of why I'm here. And I've taken it on as a responsibility that I feel like I should be doing, which is just lending my experiences so that there are things that they can avoid doing. And, maybe some things that I just didn't realize I was doing the wrong way that can help them succeed in the ballet world or in life in general. So I usually keep a small circle of dancers that I mentor hands-on, but right now I'm really focused on 2 African-American boys that one just got into the studio
twins,
company,
yes.
Nazir and Shakir,
Very
and the
gifted.
other one just got moved up to the highest level of the JKO school, which is ABT school. But I'm really focused on them right now because I think that it's a very critical time right now. They're, I think,
Teens.
17, and
They just graduated high school.
yeah.
The
Thank
hormones are
God.
raging.
And it's just, I think, a time where I need to be there and hands-on with them. But I think it's so important for our youth, for us to be there as examples and show them what success looks like for them.
So this is a perfect segue to the final question before opening the floor to questions. What would each of you have said, knowing what you know now, to your younger self, or what would you say to a young person starting out?
I don't know. Keep the focus. If you listen to all this out here, like I said, the mosquitoes, it takes you away from your goal. And if you have the strength to do that, but I was lucky enough to have people around to help me with that. That was Janet. It had the same kind of, but you have that and you have that. Is that out here it means this? It has nothing to do with you. It has to do with the work. I don't care what kind of work it is. Art, music, it doesn't make any difference. It's about the work. And the work is very jealous and wants all your attention.
Raven?
Oh, well, I had such wonderful examples to say to young people, look at these ladies, because they're my examples. And I'm so grateful for them both. So grateful for Carmen. I used to watch her before I got in Ballet Russe to Monte Carlo. I saw you on television, and she just danced. She flowed. She spun in arabesque. She did. I said, oh, I just could dance like this. Now I have Misty, and I look and I say, oh, God, thank you. Finally it happened, because she's not just a special dancer in special ways. She's an incredible dancer. I don't care what Misty would be. Misty is special. She's just an incredible dancer and has that quality of movement that is so important to a dancer. It speaks to the soul of the audience, and I just love that. That's what you had too. Yeah.
Raven, when we were speaking earlier today, you expressed a slight regret about leaving Ballet Russe
Oh,
when
yeah,
you did.
I think, well, you always, it wastes time to have regrets. And I must say, I don't really regret anything, that I had the experience to have in the past, because I learned from it. And I'm very glad that I had some of my experiences, because I never would have learned some of the things I've learned as a human being from them. I felt when I left Ballet Russe, I guess I thought I'll get in another company, and it just didn't happen. And you can't say, because there's so many dancers to very few positions, and every director has the right to make a choice artistically, and you can't always say it's that. I think a lot of the times people, though, may not realize all the ingredients that are going into their making a decision. And sometimes if they don't like something about you, it can be something you can't change, that it's just there in your makeup. And I suppose differences, especially in the ballet, and especially back some generations, the differences were frowned at. But I just would tell a young dancer today, in fact, one dancer came up to me. I was teaching a master class, and really, like, Carmen, I can't call myself a teacher because I haven't stayed with you. You have to develop as a teacher just as you do as a dancing artist. You develop artistically as a teacher. But she came up to me and spoke to me after class, and she said, something about us being black, and this black and that black. I said, no, wait a minute. I said, one of the difficult things with us is that we don't know. That may be the burden on our shoulders, that we don't know always what it is. But the minute you start saying for everything, because it's not just ballet, it gets to be a habit. Well, I'm black, and what else? And then you give yourself some kind of a crutch that you don't need as a human being. We're very strong without it. And I don't like to see young people have to grow up with that in mind, that, just dragging that through life. It's like a ball and chain. So there's so many things that you can learn from dance that propel you as a human being into life very, very forcefully. And so you always want a young person to be able to take advantage of those things. That's why this is so wonderful about the boys. I just think that's...
And for you, Misty, what would you say to your younger self, or to a young person starting out?
I think it's important, even though, in the ballet world especially, most people will be in the corps de ballet. And you're supposed to be a unit, and everyone's supposed to be the same. Mm-hmm. But I would say that you are an individual, and you will never be the person next to you, in front of you, behind you. And just to not compare yourself to those people. It'll take away from you, and just to try and be your best self.
Excellent, excellent advice. There's a museum of blacks in ballet, a virtual museum that's starting, and their motto is, we are only as strong as our stories. And thank you so much, not only for persevering in the realm of beauty, but for sharing yours. So now I want to open the floor to questions from the audience. There are microphones that are being handed out. So A hush has fallen over Jerusalem. We've stung the audience into silence. There's a question back there.
Oh, we have someone, I think, here.
Oh, there's one over here.
I would like to say, first of all, thank you so very much for all that the three of you represent. Misty, I'm sort of appreciating that you're emotional today because I've followed you very closely. There's been an awful lot of focus on you. I don't know how you maintain your poise. It must be something that you're learning in dance as well. And I feel, you know, my heart goes out to you because of that. I think that there's must be so much pressure on you. And so to see you emotional today, you certainly deserve it. So take a bow for that. I had the great fortune to cough up all of my money for the past 2 months, and I saw you not only in Romeo and Juliet, but in Swan Lake.
Thank you.
And I have to say that the anticipation, and I saw you last year in La Bayadère, but these two performances were so absolutely special. Romeo and Juliet, so dramatic, and I thought that no one else could have danced that role as beautifully as you did. You absolutely told the story. You know, I could hear Shakespeare. I could hear the actual words in the movement, and so that was quite beautiful to me, and I actually liked it better than Swan Lake, but Swan Lake was also beautiful. And the anticipation, what I'd like to say to you is that in anticipating that performance, it starts out and there's stuff going on and dancers on the stage, and they're so lovely and they're so beautiful, and the costumes, everything is so great. And so you figure, well, how special could Misty be? And then she steps on the stage, and everything else disappears. There is something so absolutely unique about your unique body. And if I stand up, I'm 5'11". As a girl growing up, if you ever asked me what I wanted to be, I would have always said, if I could twitch my nose and make myself into something. This was the days of Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie. So if I could have twitched my nose, I would have always wanted to be a dancer. However, my mother, who is your height, 5'1", informed me that I'd have to be so really good because at 5'10" I could never be in the corps. I'd always have to be a soloist.
Excuse me, ma'am, I don't mean to interrupt you, but do you have a question? I understand your enthusiasm.
Just to thank her and thank all of the ladies on the stage for what they represent.
Thank you.
And for the poise that they have on the stage as well as in their speaking. It's incredible what you represent.
Thank you. Thank you.
Agreed. Agreed. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for your patience.
Of course, thank you. My name is Nichelle Gaynor, and I'm the author of a book.
Nichelle Gaynor,
Yes, hi,
the
Susan.
author of Vintage Black Glamour, the book everyone in this room must own. It's magnificent.
Hi, Susan. Thank you. Susan has been a great cheerleader for my book. But really, I wanted to to say hello to everyone, to Misty. I believe I saw your name in my book.
Yes, it's in there. My boyfriend put it in there.
Thank you. Ms. Wilkinson, Ms. De Lavallade, you're in my book across from your cousin Janet Collins. And I had a question really for you around Janet Collins and Tally Beatty, because I know in the 1950s, television was still kind of new, so every now and then they'd have specials on television that you wouldn't see today in prime time, opera and dance. And I know that you were a part of a great special. I believe it was the first special that featured African Americans. It was called A Drum is a Woman.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
With Duke Ellington.
And you can see that at the Museum of Television and Radio, by the way.
Yes,
the Paley
and
Center.
I've watched it there. It's great. My aunt was featured in that. Margaret Tynes, the opera singer. Joyous
Oh.
Sherrill.
That's what the interesting story about that. But go on, I'm sorry.
But I was wondering if you thought today with Misty, with the popularity that she's had everywhere, you know, with the advent of social media, and if you can see maybe I don't know if you can see it, Misty, a primetime special or something with you featuring, some type of special with dance to kind of, not only to generate more interest, but just to have something different. I mean, there have been some variety specials here and there. I'm just wondering if you can see something like that and something new from television.
Would
There's
be
still,
nice,
you think you can
wouldn't it?
dance, Dancing with the Stars, so why
Yeah.
not a real star, right?
Is there a network executive in the house?
Yes. Oh, goodness gracious, yeah. Gee, I don't know. Sounds
Anything's
nice.
possible. I think it would be great to have classical ballet. on primetime television. I think the amazing thing about these dancing shows, as you said, is that it's giving people an introduction to dance that don't have exposure to it, or they don't care to be a part of it, and it's giving them some interest. But even when I went on as a guest judge on So You Think You Can Dance, I think it was after, I don't know how long, it was like 10 years now that the show was on the air, and I think it was just then the time that people were comfortable enough to have a ballerina there speaking, using the correct terms and things like that. So I think it's about time that we have classical ballet. Yeah.
I think you should be on Empire, all of you.
Yes, yes. I think that can happen. I'm gonna tweet Lee Daniels.
That's what Cookie needs. Cookie goes to the ballet. Storyline, people.
Do that.
Is there another question? Yes, sir. We need a microphone. Thank you.
This is an honor to be in front of all of you. And Misty, when I was, I have a question. First the comment. When I was in, I think maybe 7th grade, I met my all-time Yankee player, and I was like so in awe. And I feel that way today, just meeting you. I saw you in Swan Lake, and I ran upstairs. I saw your picture at the autograph, and I became a supporter just to get your picture. My question is, I guess the competition at the brotherhood, sisterhood of the ballet dancers. How do you balance that out?
Good question.
I think every company is different, and I think every dancer's experience is different. But my experience at ABT has not been this crazy cutthroat competition. It's been really, really supportive. And I think people don't realize how much time we spend together and how long dancers stay in a company. I've been there for 15 years, and there are so many that have been there longer. You travel with these people, you pretty much live with them. You see them more than your family. So I think it's a very different atmosphere. And we're also it's not a sport, so we're not competing to win. We're not competing against anyone, really. We're never put up against each other to audition for things. So it's a very different atmosphere than you would think when you see ballet movies.
The Black Swan was not a documentary, is what she's basically saying. Yes, we have 2 questions over here.
Hi. Excuse me. My question first is to Ms. Wilkinson. I would like for you to just talk a little bit about your experience in the Netherlands dancing with Sylvester Campbell.
Yes.
Who happened to have been my dance partner in the mid-70s.
Now, what is your name?
Sandra Fortune Green.
And I wore your costume. My first season in New York City Opera, Beatrice Cenci.
Yeah.
How did
Yes,
you
at the
ever-
Kennedy Center.
No, at State Theater in New York.
Okay, all right.
Hope Theater now.
Right.
But I don't know how you moved in it. Was it
Well,
laced all up in
smaller
back?
then.
But
anyway.
Sandra Fortune, I remember you so well, and you're such a beautiful dancer.
Well, it was
So glad to see you.
Well, I'm delighted that you are here and that you have come into the presence of Miss Copeland. And I also remember as a young student at the Jones Haywood School when Miss De Lavallade danced with the Capitol Ballet.
Oh my gosh, that was a John Butler ballet.
That's right. And I still have the program at the school with your picture
Really?
on the front of it. Yes,
Oh
I do.
my.
So this is kind of like such a nice experience for me. I absolutely adored Sylvester Campbell. And he talked to me about you a lot when he was coaching me for the ballet competition in Moscow.
Oh,
So I am very honored to be here in this presence. You have, the 3 of you have just made my day. And for you, Miss Misty, we go back a little bit. I'd like for you to talk a little bit about the challenges in these private ballet schools when you have young girls who are talented and could have this dance as a career, but their parents want them to go to law school. And what would you say? I have a young girl right now who's at the Ailey School on a full scholarship. She is absolutely beautiful. But her father's not going to let her do this. And so I'm trying to figure out how I can overrule her father.
I have one of my mentees actually was in ABT school, and he left to go to college because his parents said, you have to be a doctor, you can't be a dancer. And he kept coming to me saying, you have to talk to my parents, you have to convince them. And, it took a lot of me talking to him. I think that me having a voice and a presence, and for them to see my success, I think makes it a little more tangible for them, because I think especially African American parents are thinking, what kind of future is my child going to have in classical ballet? So I do think that seeing my success helped a little bit with him, but I kept saying to him over and over again, you have to own the fact that this is what you want. And as a young adult, you have to tell your parents this. This is not something that, they're going to listen to me, but I think they need to feel that from you, that this is what you really want and this is the path and that you can make a career out of it. Let them know that it's a beautiful thing. You travel the world. You can still have a career after this. I have friends that have retired at the age of 32 and are doctors now. So I think it's up to that dancer to really stand her ground and yeah.
Do we have another
I
question?
just want to
Dick?
say one thing about Sylvester, because Sylvester Campbell was an extraordinary dancer. He's the first African American, we talked about that I saw as Albrecht and Siegfried. Wow. I mean, when I, coming from America, what a shock.
They didn't put black
And I
men.
thought, well, why is it a shock? I mean, it's just that we don't see it. And he was so wonderful, and I'm so sad that we never got a chance to see him here in the United States. You see, we chop off our nose to spite our face by some of the roads we have been down and our refusal to get back up on the mountaintop, because we miss so many wonderful things that America has it and can have. So let us hope that that's
We will see
was
the
coming
twins.
to an end.
We will see the twins dance those roles and Calvin
Yeah.
Royal dance those roles.
Yeah.
Is there another
Calvin,
question?
he's just
Everybody's quiet. Everyone is quiet. Oh, there's one over there.
This question is for Misty. Pleasure to meet you. I work for Macy's, and I recently saw that you did something with Under Armour. How was that experience for you to be the face of Under Armour as a female ballet?
It says a lot, I think, about how Americans are viewing ballet and dance. And for us to be put up there next to Stephen Curry and Cam Newton, it's a powerful thing for a woman, I think, to be viewed as an athlete and as someone who's strong and in control, but also an artist. It's a big step, I think, for the arts and for women. And I couldn't be more proud to represent all of those things. So it's pretty cool.
And wasn't there a car full of flowers in the bargain?
Yes. Under Armour has been very good to me.
Anybody else? The hush has fallen.
I know, is that hush?
In the back here.
Hello. I have a question around inspiration. So you're all inspirational to so many people. What inspires you? What keeps you motivated? What keeps you going? Who are the people who do that for you, or what does that for you?
What keeps me going is curiosity, and the world itself. I go in so many different directions. I must say, it's very hard for me to talk about my life because I never stayed in one place. I want to go here. I was in the opera. I was in early television, very early television, even 3D. And the films and opera and nightclub and concert work and anything I could. And then I ended up at the Yale Repertory Theatre, and that opened my world even bigger because dancing is like being in the army, right? Mm-hmm. You know, where the actors are totally opposite. They talk all the time and they're very unruly. But it was a lovely combination, and that's when I really grew up. And when I went back to my dancing, I understood what I was doing much more. It wasn't it wasn't just arms and legs. Although I was always a dramatic dancer. I don't know, I was just born with it, I think. I was like duck to water. But then I started understanding more about what movement was about, really. But I also had wonderful people to help me, from Lester Horton, Carmelita Marachi, Agnes DeMille, John Butler, you know, and my husband Jeffrey. I didn't know anything about West Indian and drums and all that, but I really learned a lot from him. I really did. You know, it was eye-opening, but that's my curiosity, and that's what keeps me going. Even today, I'm, you know, looking at old Pluto up there and like that, and anything that grabs me, you know, and all that goes into my work because it's the world is inspiring. That's what keeps me going anyway.
And you keep us going. No, I think every dancer, and especially young dancers, should see Carmen on stage, because Carmen only has to stand there. She only has to stand. And that's something when you tell students, they don't always understand, that when you stand on stage, you're dancing. It's how you stand. Dance is going through you. It's when you stop the combination, you stand, because the music is still going through you. And she just such an incredible... You know what I
realized this week? Because I was speaking to someone, that I felt that being on the stage is a pas de deux. That you're the partner. And you're not just here doing your thing, you know, but we're working together because you can feel the power of the audience. You can really feel you know. You can feel what the theater's like. So I would always go out before anybody's there and take in the space, no matter what it is, small or large. Take in the space because we're going to have to work together. And that way, it's not because I've seen performances where you might as well phone it in. You know, you sit there and they're not doing anything. You know, they're beautiful, but nothing's happening. It's not coming across. It's not being generous to your audience, you see. And I think I've always sort of had that without knowing it. But then to have people that you have examples like Josephine Baker and Lena Horne and people like that who give their generosity, great, great people. And I was very fortunate to be around these people who have helped me. But it's a pas de deux for me.
Absolutely.
I think
really
that's what performing is.
I love that. Yeah. I remember once in an opera at New York City Opera called the Dreyfus Affair, they had us on swings with little paddle bottoms and your tights slipping. And we went all the way to the proscenium arch. And everyone looked at me in the rehearsal with the curtain up and the house open and the red seats. I was like, and they said, "Raven, are you frightened?" No, of course not. I said, I'll feel a lot better when the audience gets in those seats. Somehow it's comforting. Of course, they might not have been comforted because they might have wondered if one of us was going to spring forward into their laps somehow. But it's a comfort that they are there because you are part of them and they are part of you. And you're saying something to them. You're not just simply there on the stage. Yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah. Misty, do you want to answer the question of what inspires you?
Yes, there's so much give and take. And as an artist, you want to constantly grow. And you have to step into things that are uncomfortable, I think, to get there, as we were talking about backstage. Right. And that's what inspires me, is learning from other people, you know, even going and taking ballet class with the young ones, you know, the technique is the same, but they just keep getting better and better and better each generation. So I go to these classes and I learn so much from these like 13-year-olds. And it's inspiring. I think that our youth is so inspiring. They are so intelligent and so smart. And then you put them in a ballet class that gives them discipline, structure, and focus, and they're going to take over the world. So that's inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
How are we doing for time? Okay, we have to wrap it up. Can we just hear a little bit about what you're about to do? You're about to star on Broadway in On the Town, starting August 25th for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that's going to be really uncomfortable. That I hope will allow me to be that much better as a ballerina in every role that I take on at ABT. Going on stage and speaking in front of people and singing. So right now, that's what I'm focused on.
And Carmen, when can people see you here and As I Remember It or in the area?
Oh, I wish I could bring it back, but I'm trying to. Next year, though, I'm not. Well, I'm still working on. I'm writing and whatever. And I have to tell you that I decided that my 85th is next year, so I'm going to do my piece in Los Angeles, California, and have a big party and have a blast. Hang it up.
And Raven, we want
I'm
that
going
book.
to the blast.
Well, you've given us a blast. And on August 1st, there is a celebration of Jeffrey in Damrosch Park, a celebration of Jeffrey Holder.
Yes, it's his birthday, so we're having a big celebration.
And everyone's invited.
Yes, in the evening there's a big performance. Free.
What time is it?
8 o'clock, I think.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
It'll be fun to celebrate his birthday.
So the Green Space is giving us the hook.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And thank you.